For those of you who've already done Jumla Ismiyyah and Jumla Failure, we are going to briefly go through. This is the revision session. So those of you who have an idea what is a Jumla Ismiyyah and Jumla Failure, we're going to quickly go through these, inshallah. Introduction. There are two types of sentences in the Arabic language. There are two types of sentences in the Arabic language. They are Jumla Ismiyyah and Jumla Failure. If a sentence begins with an ism, it is called a Jumla Ismiyyah. And there are a few exceptions to this rule. If a sentence begins with an ism, it is a Jumla Ismiyyah, and there are a few exceptions to this rule. If a sentence begins with a fail, it's a Jumla Failiyah, and there are no exceptions to this rule. So if a sentence begins with an ism, it is a Jumla Ismiyyah, and there are a few exceptions to this rule. If a sentence begins with a fail, it's a Jumla Failiyah, and there is no exception to this rule. We will begin our study of sentences with Jumla Ismiyyah. So, finding the invisible is. Unfortunately or fortunately, however you see it, there is no is. There is no word for is in the Arabic language. There is no is in the Arabic language. There is no word for is. So we detect it by its absence. And we do it through practice. And with practice, we find out that there is no is. But there is where there is no is. So is, am, are, these are not there in the physical sense, but we have to make sense by understanding and recognizing the pattern of how words are connected together. So usually whenever there's a disconnect, then there is an is. So every Jumla Ismiyyah contains an is or one of its variants, am or are. In Arabic, however, there is no word for is or its variants. In a Jumla Ismiyyah, the is invisible. The is invisible. There is one golden rule that you can use when searching for the invisible is in a Jumla Ismiyyah. It is called the break in the chain. And for that, you have to go all the way back and remember how many fragments we have done. So when you have so many fragments and there is a break in the chain, then there is an is. But the is will not be after every break in the chain in the sentence. There is, this is, that is, who is, which is. There is not going to be so many ises in a sentence. There's going to be one is in the first break in chain. Okay? So it's not going to be like after every break in chain you put an is. No. First break in chain, there is an is or are or am. So we were introduced to the concept of words having a relationship with the words around them when we studied 5 fragments in the previous chapters. As long as the word is a part of one of these 5 fragments, it is in a relationship and is part of what we call the chain. A chain of words that are all connected in some way. As soon as we find 2 words that are not a part of one of the following relationships, we have a break in chain. So there is al-jar wal-majroor, there is harful nasab, wa ismuha, there is idafa, there is mawsuf sifa, there is ismul ishara wa musharun ilayh, there is harf ataf. When there is a break in chain, then we go back to the first one and there is an is over there or an are or an am. So here we see the following example. Al-malu wal-banuna zinatul hayati dunya. Al-malu wal-banuna, then there is a gap, there is a break in chain, and then zinatul hayati dunya. So that's because we are referring to plural things, so we are going to make it an are. Then al-anfalu, break in chain, lillahi wa rasuli. Al-Anfalu. There is no connection with Lillahi wa Rasuli. So the spoils of war are for Allah and the Messenger. Badukum min badin. Badukum min badin. After Badukum, there is no connection. So some of you are from others. The common breaks in chain. There are some breaks in the chain that occur frequently, and take a look at the list below. After independent pronouns. Independent pronouns are followed by an invisible is. They usually appear at the very beginning of the sentence. Independent pronouns are followed by an invisible is. They usually appear at the very beginning of the sentence. If the independent pronoun is followed by an ism, the pronoun and the ism match in number and gender. So, independent pronouns. What are the independent pronouns? Independent pronouns, these are the ones that are not attached pronouns, obviously. So, independent pronouns are huwa, huma, hum, hiya, huma, hunna, all of those. These are called independent pronouns. The attached pronouns are the ha, huma, hum, hiya, he, huma, hunna, and ka, kuma, kum, ki, kuma, kunna, and so on. So, huwa, huma, hum is the list of the independent pronouns. They usually appear at the very beginning of the sentence. If the independent pronoun is followed by an ism, the pronoun and the ism match in number and gender. Antum qawmun musrifun. Antum, break in the chain, qawmun musrifun. You all are an extravagant nation. Huwallahu. Huwallahu. Huwa Allahu. He is Allah. Huwa Allahu. He is Allah. Ana khairum minhu. I better than him? No, I am better than him. Huwa minal kitabi. Huwa, it from the book. No, huwa minal kitabi. It is from the book. Okay. After pointers. There is an invisible is after an ismul ishara if the word after it does not have an al. Let me read that again. There is an invisible is after an ismul ishara if the word after it does not have an al, alif lam. It usually appears at the very beginning of the sentence. If the ismul ishara is followed by an ism, it matches the ism in number and gender. So, if you remember the rules of Ismul Ishara and Musharun Ilayh, the Musharun Ilayh always has an alif lam to make it an Ismul Ishara fragment. If it has the alif lam, it becomes Zalikal Kitab becomes that book, not that is book. But when it becomes, when the Kitab doesn't have alif lam, it becomes, when the Kitab wouldn't have an alif lam, they will have an is between them. So similarly here, Ulaikal Ashabu would be those people, but there is no alif lam here. So is or are will come between them. So when the ismul ishara and the next ism, they're not connected with an alif lam. The alif lam is missing. Alif lam is missing, then is is there or are is there. So when alif lam is missing after the ismul ishara, then is and are going to be there. Similarly here, haza min indillahi, haza is not followed by a word that has an alif lam. I don't see any alif lam over there. Even if I look with a microscope, I don't see an alif lam after haza. So there has to be an is or an are. So haza min indillahi, this is from Allah. Ha'ula'i, again, the next word is not followed by alif lam. So these are our intercessors. Hazihi naqatullahi, again there is no alif lam after an ismul ishara, after a pointer. Alif lam has to be there to make it a pointer fragment. So if the alif lam is not there, then it is followed by is or are. So again, sentence versus fragment. Let us revisit the second rule of Ismul Ishara wal Musharun ilay. The Musharun ilay must have an alif lam. This is because if it does not, the fragment turns into a sentence. So the alif lam and the no alif lam must be remembered. If there is an alif lam, it is a fragment. If there is no alif lam, it is a sentence. And for this, you have to revisit Ismul Ishara and Musharun ilay that we have already done. So next fragment is Harfun Nasab. Along with its ism is followed by an is. It generally appears at the beginning of a sentence. Ism of inna matches the number and gender with the word after is. So Harf Nasab and its ism are often followed by is. And this will also be usually at the beginning of the sentence. What are we talking about? Which sentence? Jumla Ismiyyah. All these fragments we are discussing in Jumla Ismiyyah. So Harf Nasab and its ism, when they come in the beginning of the sentence, they will usually be followed by is. So here we have the example, innaha bakaratun safra'u. Certainly it is a yellow cow. Inna Allaha ma'as sabirin. Inna Allaha ma'as sabirin. Certainly Allah is with those who are patient. So the is comes after the harf nasab and the ism. It does not come between the harf nasab and the ism. It comes after the harf nasab and the ism of the harf nasab. Again now, proper and common word. When a proper word is followed directly by a common word and goes between them. The two words usually match in number and gender. So, proper and common words, when they come together, is goes between them. The two words usually match in number and gender. Here we have Yadahu masbutatani. His two hands are extended. Yadahu masbutatani. Both words are in dual form, pair form, and there is a R between them. Then we have Wallahu wasi'un halim. Wallahu wasi'un halim. Allah is all-encompassing and knowing, all-knowing. So these are the common breaks in chain where we get is or are or am. So now how do we label? How do we label Jumla Ismiyyah? So when it comes to grammatical labeling or Arab, we use a two-level labeling system. The two levels are sentence level labels and fragment level labels. Sentence level labels and fragment level labels. Sentence level can be macro level and the fragment level can be micro level. Think of sentence level label as buckets. Sentence level label as buckets that contain words, fragments, words or different fragments inside of them, and sentence level labels are the higher level labels that deal with the parts of a sentence on a larger scale. Fragment level labels are used to further dissect the sentence level material. This is for study purposes. We do this in order to understand and grasp the exact meaning intended from every word. So this is very good skill if somebody develops this. How to understand which word has which grammatical label is a very, very good skill to accomplish. So a Jumla Ismiyyah is made up of three parts. A Jumla Ismiyyah is made up of three parts. And whenever you study any language, you have to study in grammar the different parts of words that make a sentence. Every language has this. This is not a rocket science or something. It's not. Some people make it appear as if it's something very difficult. It's not. Every language has this. Every language has this study, and every language has these parts and like so many labels and everything. So don't let shaitan make you believe that it is something difficult or something very complicated. It is not at all complicated. It's the easiest bit. You just have to spend time on it, just like you have to spend time on any other language. So a Jumla Ismiya has three parts: Mubtada, Khabar, and Mutalik bil Khabar. Mubtada is the part before is. That is an oversimplification, but it is the part before is, and it is made up of a single ism or an ism plus ism fragment, or it is made up of a harf of nasab and its ism, and it is marfu. By default, the four common breaks in chain that we learned are considered common types of mubtada. So the mubtada is it's like the main highlight, the subject of the sentence, the thing that is being spoken about or the thing that is being discussed, the main subject of the sentence. Mubtada is the part before is. Easy to identify, it comes before the is. It is made up of a single ism or an ism plus ism fragment or a harf of nasab and its ism. It is marfu by default, and the four common breaks in chain we have just gone through are considered common types of mubtada. Khabar is the part after is. It is made up of a single ism or an ism plus ism fragment, and it is marfu by default as well. So in a Jumla Ismiya, the mubtada is marfu, the khabar is marfu, and the mutalik bil khabar is a jar majroor or is a special mudaf fragment of time and place. So in a Jumla Ismiya, the mubtada will be marfu, khabar will be marfu, and the mutalik bil khabar will be jar majroor or mudaf, special mudaf fragment of time and place. Every Jumla Ismiya must have a part before is and a part after is. This means that it must have a mubtada and either a khabar or a mutalik bil khabar. Every Jumla Ismiya must have a part before is and after is. Now the after is, so this means that every Jumla Ismiya must have a mubtada. A Jumla Ismiya must have a mubtada and it must have one of the two, a khabar or a mutalik bil khabar. It is not necessary to have both khabar and mutalik bil khabar. It will still be a Jumla Ismiya if it has a mubtada and a khabar and no mutalik bil khabar. It will be a mubtada and a mutalik bil khabar and no khabar. It's still a Jumla Ismiya. So the first part is important before is, mubtada is important, and the khabar and the mutalik bil khabar are not, both of them are not important. One of them will be enough. So it may have both a khabar and a mutalik bil khabar, and in this case the is goes at the first break in chain. And again, you cannot have a Jumla Ismiya without a mubtada. Take a look at the following examples. The mubtada is underlined once and the khabar twice, and the mutalik bil khabar is underlined 3 times. Inna salataka, certainly your prayer. There's a break in chain. Is sakanun, a relief. Lahum, for them. Lahum is a jar majroor, so that's mutalik bil khabar. Inna salataka sakanun lahum. Inna salataka sakanun lahum. Then we have wahuwa, he is khairul hakimin. Khairul hakimin. So we have a mubtada and a khabar, and we don't have any mutalik bil khabar in this sentence, but it is a complete sentence. He is the best of judges. Again, we have inna abana, certainly our father. Lafi zalalim mubin. Lafi zalalim mubin is in clear error. So that is a mutaliq bil khabar, and there is no khabar, but it's still a sentence. Certainly our father is in sheer error. So this was sentence level labeling, and now we see the fragment level label. Recall that on a sentence level we have mubtada, khabar, mutaliq bil khabar. Each of these is like a bucket that holds either an ism or a fragment inside of it. When doing fragment level labeling, we are pulling the contents out of the sentence level buckets and analyzing them. So here we have three parts of the Jumla Ismiyyah: mubtada, khabar, and mutaliq bil khabar. Now, when we look at the micro level, we look at the example, Inna salataka sakanun lahum. Certainly your prayer is relief for them. In the ayah above, on a sentence level, we have mubtada bucket, khabar bucket, and a mutaliq bil khabar bucket. And let us look at what we have contained within these buckets. So within the mubtada, we have Inna salata. It's a harfun nasab, wa ismuha, and salataka is an idafa. Then there are no fragments within the khabar, sakanun. And then within the mutaliq bil khabar, there is jar majroor, that is lahum. So this is how, for practice, if you want, you can go through this 4, 5 times, 10 times if you like. Inna is Inna salataka, that's mubtada, but in the mubtada bucket we have harf nasab wa ismuha, and then salataka is the idafa. If you like, you can go through this like that 10, 20 times, just for practice, just to have it sit in your head in a solid way. Turn this into a long-term memory, turn a short-term memory into a long-term memory, repeat it. Repetition is the only key for learning something. Again, with this example, you can do Inna abana. Within the mubtada, we have 2 fragments. Inna aba is harfun nasab wa ismuhu, and then abana is an idafa. So within the mubtada alone, you have 2 fragments. This is called micro level labeling. And if you like, again, you can do either these examples you can repeat multiple times, and then you can practice on other ayat. Abnormal sentence structure. The standard order of a typical Jumla Ismiyyah is the mubtada followed by the khabar followed by the mutaliq bil khabar. So this was the standard. Jumla Ismiyyah, mubtada, khabar, mutaliq bil khabar. Mubtada, khabar, mutaliq bil khabar. That's Jumla Ismiyyah. It is possible for this order to be shifted for rhetorical purposes. Shifting the order can produce several different meanings. The meaning produced by the shift in order is determined by the type of shift and the context. In terms of labeling, when something appears before it is expected to, it is labeled as muqaddam, which means brought forward. When something appears after it is expected to, it is labeled as muakhar. So if it appears before expected, it is called as muqaddam. When it appears after the expectation, it becomes muakhar, which means delayed. If there is something that is muqaddam in the sentence, there will necessarily be something muakhar. So there are 2 common abnormal patterns. They are al-mutaliq bil khabar, muqaddam, and then mubtada, and then mubtada, and then mutaliq bil khabar, muqaddam, and then the khabar is muakhar. So the first pattern, in which the mutaliq bil khabar comes before the mubtada, generally produces a meaning of exclusivity. So mutaliq bil khabar, muqaddam, coming before the khabar, generally even coming before the mubtada, produces exclusivity or ikhtisas, exclusivity. So wa ilallahi al-masir, ilallahi al-masir. To Allah alone is the final place of return. Wa indahu mafatihul ghaibi. With him exclusively or alone are the keys to the unseen. Similarly, lahu mulku samawati wal ard. To him or for him alone, only and only for him, is the ownership of the skies and the earth. So note that if the mubtada is common, it must be made muakhar. And when the mubtada is common, there is no balagha implication. When the mubtada is common, then by default, its default is delayed presence. So when we say fi kulubihim maradun, then it is not an exclusivity. That's normal. Fi kulubihim maradun is a normal sentence. It's not mutalik bil khabar, muqaddam or muakhar. It's how it's supposed to be. And similarly in the other example, anna lahum ajran hasanan. So that they have a beautiful compensation. Yeah. The second pattern in which the mubtada remains in its place and the khabar and mutalik bil khabar switch places can produce a variety of meanings. The intended meaning is determined by context. Emphasis and giving importance or showing interest are two of the many possibilities. Okay. Okay. Let's have a look at Wallahu ala kulli shay'in qadirun, and Allah is completely capable over every single thing. So there is a difference between abnormal and unusual or rare. The structures introduced in this section defy the standard but are commonly used and commonly found in the Quran and other literature. Alright. Over here, Wallahu ala kulli shay'in is the mutalik bil khabar and qadirun is muakhar, but it is common. So he has and there is sentences. These are very common. In fact, these are very common usages of. Usually we use he has, there is in every sentence almost. So there are two structures in Arabic where abnormal sentence structure is used. These structures are used in ordinary speech and not for rhetorical purposes. So he has sentences which express possession, and there is sentences that express the existence of something or someone. And the mutalik bil khabar muqaddam followed by a mubtada muakhar structure is used. You just have to memorize the template. You just have to memorize how this is done. There are two templates that are commonly used to express possession and stated previously. Both of these templates are made up of mutalik bil khabar muqaddam and mubtada muakhar. In these sentences, the sentence will not start with a mubtada. That is the meaning of mubtada muakhar, that the Jumlaa Ismiyyah will not start with a mubtada, as we discussed earlier. So it will be a delayed mubtada. So in the first example, the first template, the mutalik bil khabar muqaddam is made up of harf jar, lam, followed by the owner of the item. So the mubtada muakhar is the item that is owned. First we talk about the harf jar and the owner, and then the thing that is owned comes in the second part. Laha shirbun, she has a right to drink. Liz zakari mislu hazzil unsayan. For the male comes first and then equivalent the share of the two females. So the possession aspect comes before the mubtada. Mubtada comes later. This is a normal pattern and it has to be learnt like that. The second template is made up of a special mudaf called inda, and then mutalik bil khabar muqaddam, followed by the owner of the item. So the mubtada muakhar is the item that is owned. Wa indahu ummul kitabi. With him is the essence of the book, or the mother of the book. Wa indahu mafatihul ghaibi, and with him exclusively are the keys to the unseen. And then the there is sentence. These are two templates that are commonly used to express the existence of something at a certain location. Then fi kulubihim maradun. Fi kulubihim comes first, maradun comes second, but this is the common way of saying it. Wa bainahuma hijabun. Hijabun comes later, bainahuma comes first, but this is the common way of saying it. And now we will talk about complex sentences. Having sentence as a khabar. Having a whole sentence as a khabar. How does that work? having a whole sentence as a khabar. Now these are called complex sentences. Recall our discussion about sentence level and fragment level labels, or macro and micro i'rab. Recall that on a sentence level the possibilities are limited. On a sentence level, the possibilities are limited because we only label them as mubtada, khabar and mutalib al-khabar. In a Jumla Ismiyyah on a sentence level, there are only three labels, right? Three buckets. Mubtada, khabar, mutalib al-khabar. Contents of those buckets can vary. Each bucket could have multiple things, more than just one khabar or one mutalib al-khabar, or the khabar could be a whole sentence. The topic of complex sentences is concerned with the khabar bucket in particular and what it can hold within it. The khabar bucket is special and different than the other two buckets in that it can hold a full sentence within it. It can carry both Jumla Ismiyyah or a Jumla Failiyah. We will study more about Jumla Failiyah as a khabar after we study the fail. For now, take a look at the following examples of a Jumla Ismiyyah as a khabar. Now in this sentence, Haza huwal haqqu. This, it is the truth. Haza huwal haqqu. Haza is already the mubtada and huwal haqqu again is a whole sentence as the khabar. Innaka, certainly you. Anta allamul ghuyubi. Innaka, certainly you. You are the knower of the unseen. In the examples above, there are two tiers of sentence level labeling. This is because the khabar, which is a sentence level label, has a sentence inside it. After completing the first tier of sentence level labeling, the sentence inside the khabar is pulled out and labeled like any other sentence. Huwal haqqu, it is the truth, and anta allamul ghuyub, you are the knower of the unseen. Then you have to underline the mubtada again and then the khabar, and then mubtada and khabar again. So here it would be Haza is mubtada and huwal haqqu is khabar, but of huwal haqqu, huwa is the mubtada and al haqqu. You have to label again. And remember that in Jumla Ismiyyah, the i'rab of the khabar is marfu. The i'rab of the khabar and the mubtada both are marfu. Having multiple khabar, it is possible to have two or more khabar back to back with no harf ataf between them. This occurs most commonly with the names of Allah, but also elsewhere in the Quran and other literature. Wallahu wasi'un alim, and Allah is all encompassing and all knowing. Wa Rabbuna Rahmanul Musta'an, our master is the merciful and the one who is relied upon. Okay, I think I will wrap it up here, inshallah, and then we can do this. We will revise. We will go through the bullet points again of Jumla Ismiyyah next time, and then we will continue with the Jumla Failiyah, inshallah.